Hi, this is Steve and Jenny Floriston. This video is to help you with the practical assessments for the diploma. The purpose of it is to streamline the practical assessments so that you can just work with a couple of students or 3 students and it will do quite a few of the assessments. So this is a list of all of the assessments that you need to do for the diploma. A lot of them, as you realise, are credit transfers or RPLs. And the ones that we particularly want to look at are assessments for 18, 20, 21 and 23. And if you have a look at the training package, I've just taken some of the skills descriptions out of the training package, and you'll see that it talks about working with 3 young people, at least 3 clients, down the bottom there 3 clients, and at least once with 3 clients and so on. And so we need to work with at least 3 clients, and they'll be your 3 young people, and we can work with the same 3 young people for different units or different assessments. So we just want to look first of all at assessment 18.2a, and that covers unit 18 and unit 20. So for unit 18 and unit 20, which is 18.2, we're looking at doing an assessment for 2 students. We call them student 1 and student 2. And then we have student 3, and student 3 covers unit 21 and unit 23. So I hope that makes sense. So instead of doing 3 units for 18, 3 students for 18, 3 students for 20, 3 students for 21, we're just going to do one lot of 3 students, and they will cover all of these assessments. Okay, so the first 2 of these students, what we're looking at for these students is to have a look at their needs, be able to try and meet their needs, and then assess how we've done that. And this is a pro forma that you can use. This is an attachment, and you can see here the different parts of this pro forma. And I have filled one out for this student, Toby Long. Now, Toby Long is not really the student's name, and you can either identify the student by a number or a different name, but we can't have their real name, but it must be a real student. So you can see the presenting issue. Toby arrived at the school at the start of term 3, so he came halfway through the year, and in the first part of the year, his time there, just in the first week, he was involved in fighting incidents. He was not complying with teachers' requests, those sort of things. The other problem for Toby is that he's achieving well below his peers in literacy and numeracy. So we've got these 2 overall issues. And then you can see the second part of this. This is a screening and assessment process. And to do this, we used just general observation, and we would use journal notes, the enrolment application, the enrolment documents, and in the enrolment documents you'd have material from interviews, like with his previous school, with parents, that sort of thing. We've also got incident reports from the school, and also an incident report from boarding, and interview notes with the deputy principal when he got into strife, and with the head of boarding when he got into strife in boarding. So that's the log of actual activities for this student. And you can see the second column are the dates when those activities occurred, and then the documents that we're attaching to show what we did, and the relevant documents to each one of those actions.
So Steve, you expect staff to fill this in from their residence for a real student, and to sort of follow those steps where they go and collect the information and they attach them as documents?
Yes, that's right. Yep, that's right. So that would all become a part of this assessment. And this is an example. So yours may not look exactly the same, but this is a pro forma of an example, and we've worked on this, and then we've also had a social worker look at this and comment on it, and we've made some changes after the social worker has looked at it. So the next part of this are the strengths and the needs of the student. So we're having a strength-based approach to this, so we're trying to look at things positively. So the very first part of this, you'll see we're trying to identify the students' strengths around their support network, their interests, sport, music, that sort of thing, their values, any spiritual connection they've got, cultural connections, vocational goals, and then key relationships in the boarding industry. And so there's just a couple of comments about Toby here. He's got a support network in his home community, which consists of his mother and grandmother, but also his football coach. And how did we know that? Well, he told us on July the 18th and through July the 20th in conversations with him. How do we record it? It's in journal notes, and that journal note can be your own journal which you're keeping, or it might be the residence journal, which is the overall journal. So then we look at his needs, and we can see that Toby's got these social needs around relating to other students, and he needs support to manage his anger. He's got educational needs, literacy and numeracy needs, and we've got evidence of that because of these tests. Over on the right hand side you can see the tests and the results from those tests. And we have got some existing supports and strengths. So Toby's joined the local football club in the Colts program. His coach in his home community is a strong support, and he has talked to his coach a couple of times. The mother and grandmother and cousin, the cousin is in boarding with Toby. They're also strong supports. So the next section in this involves risks that may be present for the student, and we need to carry out a risk analysis. And it's great if you've got a risk analysis form, and what we generally do with this sort of thing is to take a general or an excursion risk analysis form and process, and then modify it to suit this particular process. So we can see that Toby's at risk of injuring himself or others in fighting incidents, and he is of course also at risk of being suspended or expelled from the residence. So that's a risk for Toby as well. Number 5 are the provision of services. What are we going to do to meet Toby's needs? And this is a description of what we did to meet Toby's needs. So the social needs, we've had quite a few meetings with Toby. Boarding staff and other school staff have had these meetings with Toby. They're generally after poor behaviour incidents or fighting incidents, and you can see the dates when those occurred, and then meeting notes, that sort of thing. We've an arrangement with a chaplain, established a relationship there, so that's a advocacy type arrangement, and so he can check in with the chaplain if he's feeling angry, or if he's upset, or if he just feels that he needs to talk to someone. He can check in. So we've organised this relationship. We've referred Toby to a counsellor in the town, and he's been involved in counselling sessions of 40 minutes duration. The focus of the counselling is to explore his anger, create a self-care plan, and give him some strategies that he can employ if he's feeling angry. And teachers and boarding staff have also been requested just to monitor Toby, and if there's any indicators of aggressive behaviour or escalating behaviour, then the deputy principal or the head of boarding will step in fairly quickly. We've got these educational needs, so what are we doing to meet those? In school, Toby's in a literacy and numeracy enrichment class. In boarding, Toby has a literacy numeracy tutor. It's a one-to-one tutor providing literacy and numeracy support 3 evenings a week during homework. And for his supports and strengths, Toby's supported to train and play football with the Colts group, the local Colts group. So this includes taking Toby to games, encouraging him, supporting him, that sort of thing. There's also a weekly Skype session with his mother and grandmother, and phone calls to the previous football coach, just trying to utilise those strengths and supports that are already there. So we've done all this to meet his needs, and the next part of this is to evaluate the provision of these services. Did it work? So with the social needs, the S-Care counsellor has given Toby specific strategies. The chaplain monitors his demeanour and general progress, and there's been a reduction in aggressive incidents, and there have not been any aggressive incidents at all in the last month. So that's a very big move forward. Teachers report that Toby's behaviour has improved significantly and there have not been any major incidents. Toby's mother commented and said that, she's observed all these positive changes in his behaviour and his attitude. That's after he went home for the school holidays. So with his educational needs, Toby's literacy and numeracy skills are improving. He's making satisfactory program in the enrichment class, but he is a reluctant participant in the homework sessions and he doesn't like the one-to-one literacy and numeracy support. He's commented to the head of boarding that the other students are laughing at him during homework, and he says he feels dumb. So obviously that's something that we need to change. And so point 7 down here is revision of any part of the screening and assessment process, or revision of any part of the provision of service. And so what we did there was to change the tutoring process in the homework session in term 4, so that one tutor supports the 3 boys over 4 homework nights. So you haven't got that situation where he's one-to-one and he kind of felt, I guess almost like he was being targeted. So I'm going to get Jennifer to talk to you now about the next student. So what we've just covered is we have just covered the first 2 students. So just going back to that sheet, if you remember, we've covered student 1 and student 2 in that process, and I have showed you an example of Toby and how we deal with Toby's needs.
So Steve, they have to do that for 2 students.
Yes, that's
You've
right.
only done it for Toby, they would do it for 2 students.
That's right.
All right, this is case management now, and this unit 21, is quite a large unit that involves you working with a specific student. The requirements are that you actually case manage 3 students, but it says in the criteria that they can be simulated in a simulated environment. So we've used, as you know, you've probably already done 21.2, and that had 2 different students in there. So they were scenario students, but now we need to actually move on and manage one actual student in your residence. So you'll need to actually implement a case plan for this student, and you've got some notes like this in your file that talk about how you do that. And it's all about continuously monitoring to ensure that the plans that you put into place are working for the student, and you're checking on any barriers that are stopping them from achieving the goals that you work on. So it involves talking with the student, this case plan, and you need to find a student who's willing, who has a need, and that is willing to let you work with them and who'll cooperate, and that the boarding head of boarding will be happy for you to work with closely through this whole case management process, because you need to set up a case plan for them, work with the student over a number of weeks to actually do all of the things in your case plan. And then the next step is you have to create a review of that case plan. So it'll be a case management review session where you get together with all the people that have been involved in any way, as stakeholders we call them, any way they've been helping with services for that young person, and you need to get together as a case group and have a review meeting. And that should also involve the student if possible, so that you can the student can have input, they can feel like they're able to have their say and be in control of this whole process. And while you're in that review meeting, of course, the next part of that is that you negotiate any changes in that meeting. So you would be talking to different services or different people that have been involved, and they would be putting in their bit. The young person would be saying their part and how they're feeling and what's working for them and what's not working. So I'll show you how it looks now We did give out these original student case plan pro forma with Unit 21, but this will show you an actual example of how we've worked through the case with this young person whose name is Sarah Green. And you'll note that this is also going to cover the student that you need to do this for in Unit 23. See at the top of the page there, this is covering Unit 21, case management, and Unit 23, which is a crisis situation. And in that Unit 23, you need to help a young person who's going through a crisis situation by working with them in a case management style. So this young person, Sarah Green, has been through a crisis situation where she had other young people cyberbullying her, and she went through a bit of a meltdown about that. She was terribly stressed. She got angry and upset, and so there was an incident report about her and the other young girls, and that's what triggered us getting involved and starting to case manage Sarah. So at the top of the case plan, you'll see that we involve the young person, and we have a question there, student involved in creating this plan, and we've got the young person, we should have her signature in there, and then she should tell us on a scale of 1 to 10 how involved she's feeling and how listened to she's feeling. And if you're not getting good number up there, then you need to work a way of changing how you're involving her so that she's feeling better about it. So we've talked with Sarah about her overall kind of aims or priority areas, and for Sarah, we've agreed together that she needs to build some independent living skills in her health, because she's also got issues with diabetes that have kind of come out through this whole incident, and she's not managing her medication and her eating very well, and she hasn't got these strong positive peer relationships, and the girls, and her are having trouble. So it's also come out in the case plan conversation that I had with Sarah that she's got this strong desire to have her licence by the end of the year when she graduates. You'll see by her age that she's going to be 17.5 by the end of the year, and she wants to have that. So that's a real priority for her. So we've isolated those 3 priorities as getting some strategies and protective practices for her to be able to respond to and cope with or prevent any further cyberbullying, that she'll self-manage her diabetes plan, and that she'll stick to her action plan to get her licence by December. And that sort of came out of us looking at her strengths and her positives. So in a way you could work on these 2 sections first, the strengths and the positives and the concerns that might come in the way of it. But you'll have to work out which way it works best for you to do it, strengths and positives first, or start with your goals and work on your strengths second. It's kind of, I would find it best to do both at once while you're having the general conversation with the student. So she's got a lot of strengths about the school and her achievement there. She's going very well. She enjoys her youth group involvement with the church, or the chaplain runs a youth evening, and her father's got the money ready and waiting to pay for her licence. So she's got some positives and strengths there, but the concerns that we've isolated are things like that her father has problem managing his diabetes. He's got no licence at the moment, so when she goes home on holidays, he won't be able to help her with her driving strategy. She's worried about her work experience, getting out there. She's lacking in confidence there, so she needs a bit more encouragement there. And this whole friendship issue with the girls is coming out that it's because of money issues and also the 2 different areas. She's from the Goldfields, the other girls are from the Kimberley, and there's a bit of tension there because they're from different groups and they're not understanding or communicating well about that. So you can see the next section says assessments or services that inform this plan, and we've got the incident about cyberbullying, the report about that. we will also, the nurse already has a healthcare plan for her diabetes, but we're going to work with that and the nurse to sort of action that a bit stronger. We're looking at her school reports, of course, and they're very positive. We've got her work experience plan that she's done for the year with her work experience coordinator. We want to sort of help focus in on that and her driver training plan. So we're getting copies of those two right at the start, and they've informed us of areas that we can help work on. And then we've also got this process that we use at Wongatha called student feedback tracking, and that is a document which you'll see in the attachments, so I won't flip straight through it now, but it's a process where we can work with young people, sort of mentor them each week by going through this little feedback chart, and they're putting in a scale of 1 to 10 how they're feeling about things, and that will really inform how we're going in all of this. So we would be keeping an eye on that every week. The stakeholders, you can see that we're going to involve her driving instructor, but he's not available for meetings, so won't be able to participate there. And we talk about how we keep in contact with each of these stakeholders. So you can see that there's the chaplain, and he's also an Indigenous person, so he's going to be our cultural broker there. The school nurse, her father and her vet teacher. We've got everybody involved in this plan as much as possible. Now this is the crux of the plan, in that we look at what support's needed, what's the goal, or what actions are we going to start to take, what's the responsibility, whose responsibility is at what time frame, and what measure will show that we're getting somewhere with this. And we can say yes we are or no we aren't. So the first thing we talked about with Sarah was her whole physical health, and of course this is mainly the responsibility of the nurse, but in boarding the female supervisors are going to work closely with the nurse to make sure that that's working. And the boarding staff are going to get her to implement this daily eating chart. So from now on, we will be keeping an eye on that chart and working on it daily with her, and then she'll be checking in with the nurse regularly as well. And that's going to go right through till the end of the term, which is April the 5th, her last day of attendance. The next support we need is around the cyberbullying, and so we've got some strategies or goals that we're going to work on there. We're going to have a strategy sort of conferences with her, some little sessions, 3 days this week, to work on strategies about the cyberbullying. We're going to aim towards having a restorative meeting with the cyberbulliers, and then we're going to also do some education and cyber safety with her, and then maybe the whole group a bit later on. And we're doing that weekly student tracking feedback session every week. That will have an influence on her keeping on track with all of that. So I'll show you those attachments about the cyberbullying as we get to the end. We'll just quickly work through these supports. The main problem in education, she's doing great there, but the work experience is her main problem. So we're going to work closely with her vet teacher and have weekly conferences, and she's going to aim to attend work experience every week, not miss any weeks till the end of term. So you'd be talking all through this with the student as you're writing up this plan, and then you'd be following it through regularly throughout the term with weekly or fortnightly meetings. With the family, we're going to encourage her with her keeping in contact with her father, and just finding better ways to keep in touch because he works away a lot. And then the social and interpersonal skills, it's all around dealing with that cyberbullying, and also for her it's the whole driver's licence, getting her licence by December. So we're going to try and build up her confidence, set some individual goals there about passing her learner's test at week 4, that she does 2 driving lessons weekly all term, and that she starts to be able to develop some friendships with her peers once she's worked through this conflict situation. So that comes into the whole behavioural area and relating to the other girls, and the tension seems to be coming out, and you'll see how we found this out, coming out mainly over her lots of finances compared to some of the other girls, and she's got sort of strategies. She needs to develop some strategies not to be upsetting the other girls with all her apparent wealth. So that will come out in the restorative meetings, you'll see later. And then there's the cultural sort of spiritual aspect, and we've identified this sort of a gap between the two groups, and we want to try and work on some cross-cultural experience with our cultural brokers, who are also the chaplain and his wife, and we're going to develop a bit of an experience, cross-cultural experience, to build some positive relationships between the two groups over the Easter long weekend. So that's our whole case plan, and you see the last thing we do then with her and our other people who've had input to this plan, we're going to set a review date of April the 5th, which is in the last week of term, so that we make sure we get together and have a review of it. So then you can see the steps in the ongoing case management then is we've worked out the case plan, and we've got all our evidence and the processes we're using through the term, and we're going to work on all of those, and I'll look at those as attachments in a minute. And then we've got our case review. We've set a date, and I'm going to send out a notice and an agenda of that meeting. And that will be done in a particular way so that you let people know exactly when the meeting is. Please let me know if you're not going to be able to attend, and the main points that we're going to be talking about in that meeting. And I'll be sending that out a week or two before April the 5th. So then we get together in our case review meeting, we talk about the students' progress, we make sure the student's there and feeling comfortable to put in her input, and we make any changes to that plan, and we discuss it, and then we need her and the stakeholders, and we need to all agree on the changes and any way forward. And that means that we can then put in the changes to our second case plan, and we'll be able to see that that case plan is moving forward. The little note at the bottom says, just when you're making notes in your case plan and the young person's reading these, always keep your language positive, focused, solution-focused, strength-based language rather than problem-focused. So we don't talk about the issues, but we talk about the areas where you're needing support, and that's how we keep our language positive and strength-based. Now here are the attachments. The first one I haven't actually referred to strongly, but I use this kind of strength assessment that you can get on the internet from this Steve Morgan place. I just used that to make sure that we could work through her strengths. You may or may not use something like this. The strengths are, the different areas are listed down the side, and we just work through them. But that could be something you might want to use to actually focus in on strengths a bit more. It goes down like that, and the student and you work through it together. This is the cyber safety strategy that we're going to work through with the young person, and it's got actual steps that she can take. So, and she needs to put input in there so that she can actually show she's doing some of this strategy, and then some extra little ideas at the bottom. Part of this would be turned into information sessions for maybe using with the other girls in a session later in the term. And I've got some extra notes there that just inform us about the actual legalities and background to cyberbullying. We've got the planner here that we're going to put all of her appointments, the case meeting case review meeting is going to go in there for her. Her driving practices, her work experience sessions, they're all going to go into this planning document. Now this one here is the Tell Your Story form that we use when we do our restorative meeting between the girls who were cyberbullying her and Sarah. And so each of the girls in the cyberbullying group would do one of these Tell Your Story forms. Teresita was the ringleader, so I've done it with her first. We talk about what happened, what she was feeling and thinking, who's been affected by what she's done, how they'll be feeling, how she's feeling now, and then the main point is getting to what can I do to fix the problem, and is she willing to do this? And we actually get a commitment that she's willing to do this. When's she going to do it? Well, she's going to have that meeting with Sarah if Sarah's in agreement after dinner tonight. And so then I make notes down the bottom of how that meeting goes, and just Teresita's approach to the whole thing. If Teresita won't participate in this kind of process, then we have to take it further and find a way that we can work with her in this. And the last one is this student feedback tracking form I've been referring to. And this is a process that we use at Wongatha for mentoring, working with students. Wongatha uses it through their work experience groups in their vocational classes, but boarding could use it by breaking up the students in your boarding house into small mentoring groups and connecting them with one supervisor for each group. You can actually feel like you can work in a more case management way with the young people in your group, and you're not spreading yourself over the whole group of girls trying to work with problems here, there and everywhere. It's just your responsibility to concentrate mainly on your small group. So we do this each week. We sit down with each of the students in our little group and we ask them how they're feeling, and they choose a number and put it in the chart, and it gives us a guide as to how things are going, how the young person is coping in all the different areas, where the strengths are and where maybe there are areas that need more attention. And you can do this for 1 term or 2 terms, and it's just a really good way of actually connecting in with your students each week, and keeping really in touch. I think it gives you a much more hands-on approach to working with a young person and getting feedback from them. Okay, I hope you find those attachments useful. They will be in, I think they're all in Word format that you can actually download when we send out the email version.
Yep, great. All right, thank you very much.